Welcome back to another episode, Lizards, Aliens, and Jellyfish. It's us again. It's Don and I, Donovan. I don't like calling you Don, actually.
Why? Well, no, I understand. Why don't you like calling me Donovan?
No, I just think words have aesthetics. Do you know what I mean? Like the aesthetic of the word Don versus the aesthetic of the word Donovan.
Yeah.
You know? Like
Donovan
has a job. Like Donovan is employed. He's thriving.
No, Don is just a nigga you fucked in a frat house in college. Like Don is just
please respect me.
No, that's who Don is. Like Dirty Dick Don, like that's Don. But Donovan, you're right. Donovan has a 401k. He has a timeshare in New Hampshire.
Yeah, he has a bed frame. You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah. Anyway, Donovan, how are you today?
We need to abolish how are you. Can
we? Why are we abolishing how are you?
Because it's like 2020. How the fuck is anyone who answers that question in the affirmative is either lying or a sociopath. Like anyone who is truly doing well. And I think that question just puts a lot of pressure on people this year because like it's just like, all right, now I have to think about how I'm doing. Like, nigga, don't make me think. Don't.
Okay, if I replace
my feelings,
how are you with how long have you been thinking of killing yourself?
Yeah, see, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting. So that's a question. That's something I can answer. That's something I have experience with.
That's hilarious. It is funny that most of human relations is just pleasantries.
Yeah. And
like
then we
so
wonder,
many of the way we relate to each other is so disingenuous.
And then we wonder why we don't understand each other. Yeah, like more than half. I'd say 80% of human interaction is pleasantries and respectability politics. And then we wonder why like we don't understand anyone, or why there are massive miscommunications, or why like when someone kills themselves, a bunch of people like, we didn't see it coming. It's because you spent 80 minutes being like, hey man, I'm just trying to get like you. Hey man, how the kids doing, man?
Yeah.
Like maybe if we didn't spend like 85% of time just doing like nonsense, like weird old European like standards of pleasantries and respectability politics.
What is the point of manners? Like what is the point of manners? What is the point of tradition? That's something that I'm struggling with today specifically.
Interesting. Great transition, by the way.
I know.
So I think manners are really interesting because they are imposed morality on people who clearly have none. Like if you need to tell people to say please and thank you, it means that it's not innate, meaning it's not sincere, meaning it doesn't come naturally to you. So I think it's interesting to see like which countries have like the most imposed manners and like respectability politics and all
England.
These things. Britain. Yeah,
England has entered the chat
because you guys clearly had no innate morality, which is why you were able to create the most like devious world empire of all time. Meanwhile, it's like, but the forks go on this side of the plate. Like,
I know, but like, can you give us back? Can you give Africa back its people?
Yeah,
like,
the fork goes on this side of the plate, but you purposely carved up India in a way to make Hindus and Muslims fight. Like it's
like,
people who like, have the most devious. It's people who have the most like devious actual lives that need pleasantries and need respectability politics to keep them civil, because like being civil isn't innate, you know. And then it's the people.
Do you think that's across the board for all people, or are there just certain demographics who are particularly prone to being colonial, while the rest of us are just sitting under trees eating mangoes, minding our own business?
Right. Well, I think it also goes to, have you ever heard of the poem The White Man's Burden?
No, I already hate it.
Well, what's weird is depending on where you went to school, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this read it in school at one point, but it's either taught seriously or ironically, where it's basically this poem about how it is the white man's burden to uplift these monkeys from poverty and give them silverware.
Oh my god. Is this Manifest Destiny 2.0?
It is Manifest Destiny. And
this is why I hate manifestation.
Yeah, but it's like, and we need to show them what side of the plate the fork goes on, because without that and white Jesus, they are lost. And it's heathens. It's this piece of writing that is either taught ironically, like it's either taught from the perspective of a white person who is making fun of other white people, or it's taught seriously. And I was taught it by two different professors, and they both taught it as different things, because I guess there's some disagreeing. But it's so on the nose about like how you think like a straight white man would think, that it's hilarious.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
And I will take up the mantle of uplifting these monkeys.
Like, that's really how straight white men feel.
Yeah.
Like, that's really, imagine.
Yeah. But I definitely think that there's a correlate. Like you said, it's the more you are innately violent and improper, the more you need to put these symbolic gestures of being civil, because deep down you are deeply morally corrupt and uncivil.
Yeah.
And then it's sadly the people who don't do any of those things, because they're just good people, come off as rude and uncivilized.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
I think you could say this for like autistic people especially.
Oh, for sure.
You know, like, I just think the world would be so much better if, instead of us forcing them, let me not say us, because like, fuck neurotypicals, I'm not part of that clan. If neurotypical people stopped forcing autistic people, I also hate the term neurotypical and neurodivergent. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
But if neurotypical people stopped forcing autistic people into their world, and instead we just met them halfway, like if we met autistic, not even halfway, like we need to just exist in their world, to be honest. Crazy?
I used to teach autistic kids in the Bronx, hold for applause. And there was this girl there. She was on the spectrum, clearly, but it really only affected what we're talking about, or it's like pleasantries, social cues. Besides that, she was better at math than everyone. She was better at music than everyone. She was better at writing than everyone. So it really just affected her social cues, just the little things. Like, she had no problem in school. She had problems making friends.
Me. Wow, am I autistic? Look at me self-diagnosing.
And there was this like really basic like teacher who was there helping me, and she would always talk to her in such a patronizing way, like,
that's what people do.
And this girl was far too smart for this. Like, she was reading beyond her age, like in math courses beyond her age. And there was just one day, after like months of whatever this after school program I was doing, where she was like, hey, can you stop doing that? Like, I'm disabled in these few things. Like, you only make me feel worse when you use words like special or different. Like, no, I have bad social intelligence by your standards, but like, don't do this like calling me special shit. And I thought like that was, and she got in trouble for saying that, but I remember being like, nah, you're right. Course. And like, by the way, the only reason you feel this way is because you're like way too bright for this program. But I know they feel like that, because like, you can't create a paradigm and then patronize someone for not fitting into it, because like, I don't even want to be like, I don't find human interaction interesting. I hate I have a nephew who has ADHD, which I don't believe is a thing. He's also dyslexic. He has a whole host of like cognitive disabilities, quote unquote. Yeah. And he's just been put on all of these pills, and I just hate how, I just know he's gonna grow up and like be suicidal. Like, he's just gonna grow up, he's gonna suffer. Like, he's never really hard life. He's not dumb. Like, he's extremely creative. Like, he's 8 years old, and he's like the things that he draws and the things that he makes, and like the way that his mind works. He's clearly like an incredible child, but he's forced to
go to school. We need to abolish school. But he's forced to go to school and sit in a box and listen to some old white man talk about some shit that he'll never have to apply to his real life.
Literally.
And because he's unable to sit for 8 hours every day listening to some boring ass shit, he's been diagnosed as having a disability.
Yeah.
That is completely normal to not be able
for
to
an 8-year-old
like
to not be able to sit down
like
for
are you
16
out of your
hours?
mind? Literally, like it's completely normal to not be able to be imprisoned inside a dark classroom learning about the most inconsequential colonial shit.
Yeah.
And now he's put on these pills, and then he's gonna form a dependency, and then he's gonna have a host of mental health problems,
of course,
just because he's been made to feel that he's inferior or subpar. Like,
were you ever told you had a learning
oh
disability?
no, I was diagnosed with ADHD, but from the get-go, I have never believed it. I think I've always had a little bit of an ego. Like, I think I've always, the second I hopped out the womb, I was like, everyone here sucks. Like, humans suck. I was diagnosed with ADHD, and my response is always, no, I don't have ADHD. You hoes are just boring. You don't know how to teach. Like, you just... I'm not going to sit in a chair and listen to you in your monotonous voice. Talk about rocks. Like, why do I need to know about...
Mind your business.
Why am I... Yeah, like, mind your business. I would sit at the back of the class and I would just read books. Like, I would just read whatever interests me. Then I'd get in trouble. I was just a kid in school who was always getting into trouble because I always knew from the second I was in school that school is completely useless. And then I was the one being punished for knowing what has been confirmed in my adult life. Like, school has been completely useless.
100%. This is one of those instances where I'm just very grateful I had a black mom, because when they came to her and told her I had ADHD, her response was, that boy sits down in front of the video game for 8 hours straight. He don't got no problem focusing. It's like, that boy will sit and listen to that Kanye album over and over and over again. He doesn't want to. And then I would
that's literally it. Like, why is that so hard to understand?
No, but I think... And it sucks because, like, obviously in a Western Eurocentric white supremacist education system, it's going to be the black kids who have trouble focusing because this shit does not relate to me. And
no, literally. Why are we learning about Shakespeare?
That we're the ones who get prescribed that shit the most. And the fact that people don't realize that, like, okay, I remember, did you take the SAT?
Yeah. So I did terribly.
I did like okay, but only after like taking it like 3 times. Anyway, on my final SAT, the reading comprehension section was on the Beatles. And if I was white and grew up listening to the Beatles in my home, I wouldn't have had to have done the reading comprehension section because the questions were like, what's the name of their first album? What year did this come out? What are the... If it was about the Migos, I would have just been able to answer them shits. Like, I wouldn't have had to do the reading. But it's like an innate white-centered everything. Like, absolutely everything about the education system makes it so that basically, like, white kids get priority as far as like the quickness and ability to like give a thoughtful answer to something.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm actually genuinely curious what like an objectively unbiased education system would be like, because I just grew up thinking I was so dumb. Like, I truly internalized the idea that I am stupid because I like everyone just understands everything and I don't. And I just wonder what it would have been like to grow up not feeling that way.
I mean, to be fair, I did most of my schooling in Europe, and I also did some of it in South Africa. And when I compare the history lessons, they were kind of the same. Like, I'll say like my final years of high school, all the history we did was just European history. And the only non-European history that we learned was like China, which was just Mao. Like, we just did this really intensive study on Mao. And even that was like, Mao is here 10 reasons why Mao is trash and why the Chinese are trash. Like, it was so like I left high school thinking that like China is like this really insidious, cruel country, only to like do my own education and decolonize my mind and unlearn all of the racism that was inherent in my education system. But also when I schooled in South Africa, the only non-European history that we learned was South African history. But even the South African history that we learned was how the Brits and the Dutch colonized. It was, everything was just centered on Europe. Like on top of that, I was also forced to learn Afrikaans, which is just a hyper-colonial version of Dutch. Wow, like my teenage years were truly the worst years because there's nothing worse than being made to feel like you're crazy because you point out the obvious flaws and the obvious inherent racism in everything. Like I was 13 years old. Like, why do I have to learn about fucking Victorian England? Why do I have to learn about... If we have to learn about Shakespeare, then we should also learn about Tupac. Like, no, like tell me why Tupac isn't just as valid as a poet as Shakespeare. Like, someone explain.
I think like it's got so like they will never give you the education needed to overthrow them. And
absolutely.
But I think it's, you can dream about what that school would look like. But for me, what would be here's a question, like what would be the information you needed to become the person you are now earlier? And for me, I think the answer is like, there's like a very like atypical straight black man who gets very encouraged by like Mansa Musa, we were the richest, we were kings, we had like, and although like that doesn't really do much for me because I don't have interest in that, it is dope to know that like the Moors built castles and they had like this elaborate social structure. They had like a real civilization, like all the Mali Empire, all these things. Like I think that because black people weren't pressed to write shit down, like I think that's like black people's, like, we're just not like, we're so dope every day. It's like, why take a photo? I'm about to just do this shit again tomorrow. Like, there was an innate like lack of being pressed to record history and document yourself and insert yourself. And if you want to learn about like African history, it's genuinely hard. Like somehow the Moors conquered Spain. They like this huge elaborate empire. But if you want to sit down and learn about them, it's really hard. I tried to yesterday. And it's just because black people were not pressed to just write shit down and make a bunch of paintings and make these huge civilizations. There's also the element of geographically, it didn't make sense in most places in Africa to build these huge, elaborate cities because it's just nomadic people. There's no consistent reign. There is no like perfect crescent for society the way there was in Greece. And that's why you like judge, but you don't judge society based off big buildings and paintings and things with people's name on it. You judge society based on like prosperity of life. And I think all of these ancient African societies had that. They were just I'm mad. I guess what I'm trying to get to is, one, what information would you have wanted and would you have needed? And then two, my point is just like, I'm so mad at like the erasure because like I can't even find the information that would have made me feel better.
I mean, I think if I were to accidentally have a kid right now, I'm definitely not taking that nigga to school.
Interesting.
I'm gonna, number one thing, I think we all need to be taught how to love. I know this sounds so corny, everyone's about to roll their eyes, but like actually human relationships are the only thing that's real in society and everything else is just transient illusions. It just blows my mind that we are not taught how to create and sustain fulfilling relationships. Like we're not taught what love is. We're not taught what respect is, what consent is, what fairness is.
They don't even give you a pamphlet about it. They don't even
nothing.
bring it up. It's
No,
not even
like,
like,
literally
hey,
nothing.
after the algebra homework, here's how to like not be like to gaslight your partner or something. Like,
Yeah,
they don't even
like
bring it up.
no, like not at all.
Yeah.
And I think I was lucky as a kid because I started reading a lot of these books. I think the first book that got me into philosophy was The Unbearable Lightness of Being, which was, or which is, a love story fundamentally.
Yeah.
So from there, I've always just been really interested in like love from a philosophical perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the subjects that were taught in school, actually, no, I was going to say they're fine, but actually they're not. They're completely useless. But we need to be taught things not from there's like a scientific way of being taught things, but then there's like a philosophical way of being taught things. Like,
For sure.
I would teach my child how to think philosophically, like how to unpack constructs philosophically, how to question philosophically. Do you know what I mean?
No, I do. So at Bobo's School for Gifted Lizards, you learn
You learn how to think. You're not learning, you're not filling your brain with useless
solving,
knowledge.
It's question finding.
Yes,
right?
that's exactly what it is.
Right. And I think that I remember asking one of my math teachers, like, why do we learn this? And he's like, because problem solving is a useful thing in life. But problem solving makes you a good slave because you are now problem solving as opposed to
for the master
questioning.
Yeah.
Like they want you to solve their problems, like balance
instead of
my
questioning the
checkbook.
premise. Yeah.
Yeah, like balance my checkbook as opposed to questioning why you have this much money and I make this much
literally
money. So like I had a job in the Diamond District working for this company, and I was doing their books, and they were paying me $10 an hour, and they would net profit $3 million a quarter. And like, so that math I learned, that algebra I learned in high school was useful to do that job. But I never questioned the premise of, hey fam, why are you making $3 million a quarter and I'm making $10 an hour?
Yeah.
So yes, at Bobo's School for Gifted Lizards, you're gonna teach kids, but are you gonna teach them to question you? Like, are you gonna be like, no, figure out why I'm foolish?
No, but that is literally it. This is why I say on my Instagram story don't stan me. Like, stan your own brain, because who the fuck am I? Like, I'm not consistent enough to be stanned, and I'm not like. What do you gain from don't stan me, stan your brain, don't stan yourself, but stan your brain. Like, unpack why you even like me, unpack why you even following me, like question everything. Don't take anything I say as absolute truth. Just question why you're even here. Like, don't be a fan, just be here in this community. Like, I don't want anyone. I think I would not be doing what I want to do if anyone like saw me as superior to them. And I feel like that's hard because everyone who is on social media, like building a following, is presumed to be building a fan base. I don't want fans. I want a community of lizards who are questioning and unpacking, like, which is what I would want for my own child. Because I also think you hate yourself a lot less when you're always questioning the premise.
It's also just, like, if Jeff Bezos showed up to the factory and they were all like unpacking Amazon as opposed to packing the fucking boxes, literally. No, that'd be a problem. That's exactly what they don't want you to do. But, you know, what you're speaking on is something I've always had the desire to create, which is you start off as having a following, and then you do such a good job as a quote unquote leader that they realize they don't need one. Like, that is the goal. Because
you should unfollow me after some time because you just no longer need to be on my page.
And that's like a thought I really had, because my eventual goal is to like start a school for musicians, creative type people, and I want to do it selfishly. Like, I want to surround myself with young talent that is so much better than me and has so much potential, more potential than me, that I then get to stay young by proxy, like just by being around that energy. But I think I have fundamental information that would be good to pass on to kids, but I know that once I pass it on to them, they're just going to be better than me. But that's the goal. And I think people are so scared of their pupils, or whatever you want to call that, surpassing them, where it's like, why did you put in the energy in the first place if you didn't expect them to be better than you? And there's literally a big reason I really have trouble working with anyone in music, because I think at a certain point, especially when you meet with these like higher up people at these huge companies, it has nothing to do with money. It's like, are you going to be better than me? Are you going to make me irrelevant? And I can't find the attention span to work with anyone who I don't think truly has the potential to be better than me. Like I would want to like select like 10 to 15 young musicians who I can like, oh no, that kid for sure is going to be better than me like tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's why I just want to help him. I want to be like his backup or whatever. But that's the thing. People are so scared of not being the A mic. They're so scared of having to pass the platform. But that just makes me comfortable. Passing the platform is my retirement plan. I don't want to be doing this shit forever. Like, I don't know. It's so interesting. But people don't teach properly because of that fear. They will not give you the
fear of
information
death
you need to overthrow them. If you start teaching a bunch of kids in Detroit that Mansa Musa was the richest man of all time, and the Moors conquered Spain, and they built castles, and they did all this shit, like, they don't want that. Like, they don't want, like,
no, of course not. They want you to be a good black slave.
Yeah, they don't want a bunch of 13-year-old black kids realizing that they conquered Spain. Like, they don't want that.
like no, of course not. I also think something that's important if my dream school, Bobo School for Gifted Lizards and Aliens, I want to dismantle the romanticization of intelligence. I think as a society we really fetishize intelligence. I would make everyone sign a contract that says, I acknowledge that by gaining intelligence, I'm going to be depressed, and I'm okay with that. Like, I'm at peace.
Like
I don't want to give.
Is like the required reading.
Yeah, no, Flowers for Algernon is grade 1. Like, because
grade 1.
Yeah, no, in grade 1, bitch. Like, let's talk about Algernon. Like,
hilarious.
Let's talk about Charlie. Like, let's really unpack. Yeah, because I want.
You should tell people what that
to
book
understand.
is about, by the way.
Oh, yes. If you haven't read Flowers for Algernon, it's actually someone in my Discord, I think Christine, recommended me Flowers for Algernon, because we were talking about books for some reason, and she was like, bitch, you would love this book. So I got it immediately, and I loved it immediately. And I was like, this should be recommended reading for everyone. To understand that, like, as soon as you are aware of the world around you, you will be frustrated, you will be enraged, you will be in a constant state of disillusionment and frustration and rage, and that is completely normal. But it's also important to understand that, like, you have to sacrifice something to gain anything. Like gains are always sacrificial, and what you sacrifice for wisdom is happiness. Like, you just simply have to be at peace with knowing that, like, it's funny because Charlie, the main character in the book, basically what happens, I'll give a brief summary, is that there's this guy who is by Western standards considered really dumb. He was just born really dumb. He never really learned how to spell or how to read. His emotional intelligence is pretty low. He struggles to assimilate into mainstream society. He's just, by Western standards, pretty dumb. So these neuroscientists come up with this surgery that they think can make people intelligent. So they use him as a test bunny, a guinea pig, and they then just monitor his journey of going from being a dumb bitch to being a quote unquote smart bitch. And the first thing that happens once he starts to gain awareness is he realizes that he has no friends. All the people that he thought were his friends were actually making fun of him this whole time. He realizes that everything he thought he knew is actually a lie. Like, the people he thought were his friends were actually just people making fun of him. They were laughing at him and never laughing with him. He just starts to unravel. And the very first emotion that he experiences upon gaining awareness is rage. Like, he is just enraged, which is such an accurate depiction
it is
of the journey of awareness. I feel like people really romanticize the journey of enlightenment, the journey of awareness, like spirituality. But no one tells you that, like,
about the rage.
Yeah, enlightenment isn't a state of pure bliss. Enlightenment is a catalyst for being in a constant state of rage. Until you plateau and reach the equilibrium of just pure acceptance of reality.
And I think it's at that moment where
and peace of mind.
I think it's at that moment of, like, enlightenment, moksha, awareness, whatever you want to call it, where you actually need the most guidance, because we're now. Like, where do I go now, fully realizing that nothing matters. And life is a series of absurd, unforgiving events. And like, where do you go now? And then the thing is, that's the point where there are no teachers and there are no students. There are subjects. But I think what would be interesting to offer at the Bobo School for Gifted Lizards sometime around maybe like 11th or 12th grade, whatever the thing is like, at a certain point it's about coping mechanisms and damage control. Because I think if you're going to make people smart, you have to give them something to cope with.
To not kill themselves. Well, that's what philosophy is, like, I think people start to get into philosophy and then they realize, oh shit, this is depressing. But they don't continue to read, because there's a lot of consolation in philosophy. Like, there's actually a lot of like coping mechanisms. I think, like, Albert Camus' entire theory of absurdism is a coping mechanism for how to live in a cruel world. Like, existentialism is fundamentally just a coping mechanism for, like, how to deal with living in a world that fundamentally doesn't give a fuck about you.
Another thing is, like, not only how do you teach, but how do you enforce rules once you realize rules are nonsense and the state of the world, the true state of the world, is anarchy. Because there's this George Orwell quote that I really like. It's in his essays on childhood, where he's basically saying that there's this insane disillusionment growing up as a child, and it's very lonely, because you're born into this world of good and evil and so many rules, only to grow up and realize that these rules are fundamentally unkeepable. So you're born into this system, you're born into sin, you're born a issue, and the rules are set up in a way in which they are impossible to keep. And, like, I think there's something about realizing that the nature of reality is absurdism, but still trying to have something that makes you feel safe, and that's what rules are. But so one of the kids start misbehaving at Bobo's School for Gifted Lizards. He gets up and starts saying, I don't even know what would get you in trouble there. What would get you in trouble? You get up and start saying, like, really boring basic shit. I don't know, like, what gets you in trouble?
No, you get in trouble for being a basic bitch.
Right. So she gets up.
No, but
she shows up in her Fashion Nova bodysuit, right?
No, because like that. Okay, the way I see it, Kim Kardashian's life is not any less absurd than Neil deGrasse Tyson's life. I don't know if I'm saying his name right.
Okay.
Because like fundamentally it doesn't matter like how you choose to lead your life, because everything is absurd.
Yes.
But I think what would get you what I mean by being a basic bitch is like you're imposing your idea of like what is the right way to live. Like I think being religious at my school would get you into trouble. To impose an idea of moral absolutism.
Okay, so example.
Yeah.
I show up to the Bobo School of Gifted Lizards, beat face, Fashion Nova bodysuit, and I start passing out religious tracts.
Flyers.
Like, hey, like, you're going to burn in hell if you don't convert. It with my beat face and my Fashion Nova bodysuit.
Yeah. If you don't get this plastic surgery, you're going to burn in hell forever.
Body lava on. And I start telling all these people they're going to go to hell. And I start, like, trying to convert people. Now you have to punish me. So what is the punishment at the Bobo School of Gifted Lizards?
Oh, you just leave.
That's
like there you just like you're not go to a basic bitch school. Like if you want to be a basic bitch, you should go to a basic bitch school. Like don't do that shit here.
So the rules are simply that there are no rules.
No. I believe in anarchy as a means to an end, but I don't believe in anarchy as an equilibrium.
Okay.
Do you get what I mean?
Okay, so that's where all right, the thing about
I'm a dictator. I believe in I truly, and people always think I'm kidding. I believe in benevolent dictators, and by benevolent, I'm talking about my personal standard.
Okay,
my personal standard and definition of morality.
Here's where I really want to go, because we've been talking about societies as far as raising new minds in a society. There's schools and there are prisons, right? There's
let's go.
Yes, there's one. I've been waiting to have this conversation with you for a while because we vary differently. We do. A black man talking to a black woman about prisons.
Yeah, let's talk about prisons. Let's go.
Okay. So back to my point about that George Orwell quote about I was born into a world with rules that were set up so that I cannot keep them. So when people talk about prisons and schools, they talk about these like really fixed concepts as opposed to like existential prison. Like what does it mean to be born into a world where there are consequences? And it's something that we've been very much primed to feel since we were children. Like think of a lot of people's like house rules with their parents where it's like if you don't wash the dishes then you don't get to eat supper, or like if you don't do your chores then you have to do everyone else's chores the next week. So like it was most people's most like tender intimate childhood memories were prisons. Like the rules to your home where there were directions and there were consequences for not taking the direction. So prison is a very innate existential thing that we've all normalized, but I don't think it serves us. I don't think it is a construct, like the construct of punishment.
Are you talking about the political prison, like actual jail? Or are you talking about like the cosmic prison that we all exist in by virtue of being human beings?
If we really want to interrogate how we feel about political shit, it goes to like a really deep existential place.
Okay, talk to me.
We've normalized we've normalized the idea of prison since we were kids, because when time out you would get beat. Like there was things in your home that if you did, you would get to continue to exist in the home, and then if you didn't do, there were consequences. That is prison. We don't think about it, but we've normalized prison
absolutely
throughout every single part of our lives. And then now when it's time to talk about like prison reform or abolish the police and shit, we just don't realize that like this is a construct and a thread that we have running through our entire lives. Where it's like there will be people who are like abolish the police or whatever, but like when their partner doesn't do something, they're immediately like, we're not
take that nigga to jail.
So like
let's talk about Meg Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez. Let's talk about that dissonance.
Okay, so that's another thing where there is the woke construct of, if you want to win the woke Olympics in this post George Floyd 2020, you have to be abolish the police, abolish the police, abolish the police. But when some dumb ignorant nigga does some dumb ignorant shit and he shoots a woman, it's put that nigga in a jail, under the jail, underneath the prison, underneath the state penitentiary. And I understand that. I understand that. My thing is that this is why you can't ride the coattails of wokeness, because they conflict. You will lead yourself to a direct moral conflict. Yeah. And personally, and I say this with the privilege of someone as a black male, because if I was a black woman, I would not agree with what I'm about to say. Okay. I do not believe in the construct of prison. I don't think it helps the victim. I don't think it helps. But my thing is, prison and school could maybe be the same thing if either of them were done correctly. But they're not, because we have rules and then we have consequences for when you break the rules, instead of creating one construct that is some combination of school and prison that allows for better rules that actually serve people, and it's proactive instead of reactionary. I understand why, if I was a black woman, I would want everyone in jail. But at the same time, you have to think about, what is this society we've created where like a fourth of the population is in jail? Like, why can't we question the premise? All right, you can go. I've talked for a while. Yeah,
so I believe in prison. Okay, I don't. No, like I have to preface this with a lot of things. I haven't spoken about my thoughts on all cops are bastards and abolish the police, because it's just not the right time. Like, to talk about that at the height of the Breonna Taylor and at the height of George Floyd, and just such a politically charged year that we've had, I just didn't think this was the time to bring up that debate. But now is the time. Now election season is now that Joe Biden and his cop are running for president. I think now is a good time. That was a good time to discuss. She's a literal cop.
Tell me how you really feel.
I completely understand the sentiment behind abolish the police, because I 100% believe that all cops are bastards, because I 100% subscribe to the idea that the entire police system is rooted in rounding niggas up. Like, all the police are is just a method for rounding niggas up. It's just a slave catching tool in sheep's clothing. I 100% understand.
But
there's always if tomorrow, here are the reasons why I don't believe that we need to abolish the police. If tomorrow we abolish the police, you know who the most vulnerable members of
black women.
The most not black people, black women. Oh, you said black women. The most disrespected, undervalued member of society is the black woman. We are the most underprotected, overlooked, undervalued, disrespected, and slept on members of society. And if we abolish the police tomorrow, we will be the most vulnerable targets. So I know what you're going to say. Yes, but there's alternatives.
You don't know what I'm going to say. By the way, I completely agree with what you're saying. And every time I see anyone but a black woman talk about abolish the police, I'm like, you are full of shit. Like, you don't like, and it's one of those things where I grew up. Okay, let me preface this by saying that we have very different experiences with police, because you're
American and I'm not.
Yes, I'm American and I grew up in New York at the tail end of the crack era. Like, I grew up through stop and frisk. I have friends that are currently in jail. I have friends who've been to jail. I have friends who've died in jail. It's just something that was very normalized to me. Like, I grew up with someone who lived across the street from me, and that's where he's at right now. And the only reason why I'm not in that position is because I got to go to a really nice private school. So I very much have survivor's guilt when I think about the prison system. That's what I associate it with. You really feel the element to which it is an extension of slavery when you grow up in those neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
Because like you said, like slavery gets abolished, 2 years later there's a federal policing system. Coincidence?
Yeah. Coincidence?
No, it's quite literally what it is. There's this park growing up where we'd be playing basketball and then cops would just pull up in a car really fast and stop and then wait to see who runs and then chase after the kids who ran, because that would be the kid who has like weed or a knife in his backpack or something.
Yeah.
So it's quite literally a quota-based system of rounding niggas up to bring them into state and federal penitentiary so they can do free labor.
Yeah.
So I will always be against that construct of policing that is just rounding niggas up. But I am a 6'2" black man who does not feel scared walking alone at night. And whenever I see like a white liberal being like, abolish the police, I'm like, this does not affect you.
Yeah.
Like,
no, it's like when we went to go look at that apartment in Brooklyn. And the estate agent who was showing us the apartment was like, this is a great neighborhood. It's so safe. It's very safe. This is such an incredible neighbor. And I was like, you are a white man. Of course you're safe in this neighborhood. I'm going to get molested on site. Like
the neighborhood that he was talking about, I grew up 5 minutes away from there and got jumped like 3 times. Like that's not a safe neighborhood at all.
It's literally, like... He's trying to sell this to me. And that's another thing that we need to acknowledge when we talk about abolish the police. We have to bring our different contexts to the table.
Yes.
So for me specifically, as a black woman, black African woman to be specific, in South Africa at the moment, we have a femicide. The number of black women who die at the hands of black men every day is actually astronomical. Like it's actually, and it's not strangers. It's black women are literally being murdered by black men in South Africa at exponential rates, not by strangers, but it's usually by their husbands, by their fathers, by their friends. It's just the men that you know. And when I think about like black women more than anyone need to be protected, and I absolutely do not trust a single black man to protect you. Like, I do not think black men have black women's best interest at heart. I think black men are just interested in accessing whiteness as a form of privilege so that they too can oppress black women. But I don't think black men are actually interested in the liberation of black women. They're interested in accessing privilege for themselves so that they too can oppress those beneath them and be on a par with white men. I am not interested. I do not have faith that any black men will protect me in a world without police. Do I think that police protect me? No. But I think police provide a layer of intimidation. Where it's not it's not that black men won't rape me because police exist. It's that they'll at least think twice. I'm being honest. It's like you guys will at least think twice. I also say that as a black African living in America. Thank you for listening to the first half of this conversation. If you're interested in listening to the rest of this conversation, you will find it on Patreon. So please support my Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/bobosvoid, or you can just click on the link in the description box below. If you enjoyed this conversation, I'll be having so many more of these types of conversation with different friends, with different strangers, with all types of interesting people, and sometimes just conversing with myself. If you are interested in philosophy, politics, race, all the things, I'll be hosting all the conversations on my Patreon. So patreon.com/bobosvoid, or just click on the description box below and support me. Thank you.